My wife framed me for $12 million in fraud the same night I won the $142 million jackpot. You know that sound fluorescent lights make when everyone else has gone home? That electric hum that gets inside your skull and reminds you that you are completely alone? That was my soundtrack at 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday that would crack my life in half like a cheap dinner plate. I am not the hero of this story. Let me be clear about that right now. I am just a guy who spent 15 years staring at spreadsheets in a glass tower in downtown Chicago, making sure other people's numbers added up while my own life quietly fell apart. My name is Michael. I was a senior auditor at Clearwater Financial Partners. Past tense. That detail matters. The office was dead. Just me and the servers humming in the closet down the hall, processing numbers that would make or break companies while I sat there with my third cup of gas station coffee, going cold in a styrofoam cup. The cup had a crack in the rim. I remember that. I remember thinking I should throw it away. I did not. I was running the quarterly audit for one of our mid-tier clients. Standard stuff. Boring stuff. The kind of work that makes your eyes cross after hour 6. Revenue projections, expense reports, tax documentation. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that should have kept me there past midnight. But something was off. You develop a sense for it after enough years. It is not like the movies where some genius hacker spots a single line of code that unravels everything. Real financial fraud is not dramatic. It is boring. It is small. It is a pattern that your brain picks up on before your conscious mind can articulate what is wrong. There were consulting fees. Lots of them. Spread across 8 months. Always under $10,000. Always paid to different LLC shell companies with names like Horizon Advisory Solutions and Peak Performance Consulting Group. The kind of generic business names that could mean anything or nothing. Individually, they look fine. Collectively, they look like someone was threading money through a needle. I pulled up the payment routing information. All of them terminated at banks in the Cayman Islands. Now, that is not illegal. Plenty of legitimate businesses use offshore accounts for tax purposes. But these payments had no corresponding invoices, no statements of work, no contracts. They were ghosts. I felt my stomach drop, not because I thought our client was dirty, because I recognized the digital signature on the approval forms. It was mine, my authorization code, my encrypted key, the one I used to sign off on payments. Except I had never seen these transactions before in my life. Someone had been using my credentials to move money. A lot of money. I did the math in my head. $12 million. Give or take. $12 million that I would be legally responsible for if anyone found out. My hands started shaking. Not a lot. Just enough that I had to set down my coffee before I spilled it. I needed to think. I needed to figure out who had access to my key. But I already knew. There was only one person I had ever shared it with. Derek Castellano, my business partner, my friend for 8 years. The guy who had stood up at my wedding and given a toast so funny that even my mother-in-law laughed. The guy who knew my login credentials because I had given them to him last year during tax season when I was swamped and needed help processing payments. I told him it was temporary. He told me he would delete the access when we were done. Apparently, he had not. I stood up. My chair squeaked. The sound echoed in the empty office like a gunshot. I walked down the hall to Derek's corner office. The door was unlocked. It was always unlocked. Derek liked to project this image of total transparency. Open door policy. No secrets. His desk was clean. Too clean. Derek was not a clean desk guy. He was a coffee ring and post-it note guy. But tonight, his desk looked like it had been staged for a real estate photo. His computer was still on. The screen was dark, but I could see the faint glow of the power light. I moved the mouse. The screen flared to life. Password protected. I stood there for a second. This was a line. If I crossed it, I could not uncross it. But $12 million of my digital fingerprints were currently washing up on a beach in the Caribbean, so I figured the line was already pretty far behind me. I typed in Derek's birthday. June 14th, 1978. He had told me once that he never remembered his own password and just used his birthday for everything. He said it like it was charming, like being bad with details made him more creative. The screen unlocked. I was in. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt cold. The kind of cold that starts in your chest and spreads out to your fingers. I opened his email. Nothing. I opened his file directories. Boring client documents. I was about to give up when I saw his tablet sitting on the desk. It was unlocked. The screen showed a messaging app. Not email. Not Slack. One of those encrypted chat apps that people use when they do not want IT departments monitoring their conversations. The contact name at the top of the screen was just a letter. L. My wife's name is Linda. Was Linda. I did not touch the tablet. I just stood there and read the messages on the screen. They were recent, from earlier that evening. The contact L had written, "This old calculator will never figure it out. When are we flying?" Derek had replied, "Friday. I have the tickets. First class. You are going to love Turks and Caicos." There was a photo attachment. I tapped it. It opened. It was a selfie. Linda, my wife, in our bedroom, in our bed, wearing a black lace set I had never seen before. She was smiling at the camera. The kind of smile she used to give me a long time ago, before we became two people who lived in the same house and barely spoke. I did not scream. I did not throw the tablet across the room. I did not do any of the things they show in movies when a man discovers his wife is sleeping with his business partner and they have been systematically robbing him blind and setting him up to take the fall for financial crimes that carry a 20-year federal prison sentence. I just stood there. The world got very quiet, very slow. It felt like I was underwater. Sounds were muffled. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. I could hear the clock on Derek's wall ticking. Tick, tick, tick. There's a term in business for what they were doing to me. It is called an asset write-off. You take something that has value, and you extract everything you can from it until it is worthless. Then you dispose of it. In life, it is called a knife in the back. I took a photo of the tablet screen with my phone. I did not know why. Instinct, maybe. Then I walked out of Derek's office. I closed the door behind me. I went back to my desk. I saved all the files I had been reviewing onto a thumb drive. I shut down my computer. I grabbed my jacket. I walked out. The elevator ride down the parking garage felt like it took an hour. I watched the numbers tick down. 15, 14, 13. My reflection in the steel doors looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, gray skin. I looked like a man who had just been erased. The parking garage was almost empty. My car was a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door from where Linda had backed into a mailbox 3 years ago. She had cried about it. I had told her it was fine. It was just a car. Funny how you remember details like that. I sat in the driver's seat. I did not start the engine. I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the concrete pillar in front of me. The clock on the dashboard said 11:05 p.m. That was when I remembered. The lottery ticket. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled it out. It was crumpled. I buy one every week. Same day. Same gas station. On the corner of Clark and Division. I have been doing it for 6 years. It is not because I think I am going to win. It is just a ritual. A little piece of hope that costs $2. I always use the same numbers. My birthday. Linda's birthday. Derek's birthday. I had picked those numbers 8 years ago when the three of us went to Vegas for a conference, and Derek joked that we should pool our luck. We never won anything, not even $5. The drawing had been at 9:59 p.m. An hour ago. I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking. I opened the Powerball app. I had never actually checked a ticket immediately after a drawing before. Usually I checked the next morning. Usually I threw the ticket away without thinking about it. I typed in the numbers for my ticket. The app took a second to load. Then it showed the winning numbers from tonight's drawing. 7, 14, 23, 42, 51. Powerball 9. I looked at my ticket. 7, 14, 23, 42, 51. Powerball 9. The numbers were the same. I stared at the screen. I read the numbers again. I looked at the ticket. I looked at the phone. I did it 3 times. 4 times. The numbers did not change. At the bottom of the screen, in big bold letters, it said, "Jackpot winner, $142 million." I did not make a sound. I just sat there in my Honda Civic in an empty parking garage, holding a crumpled piece of paper worth more money than I would have earned in 10 lifetimes, while my phone held evidence that my entire life had just been stolen from me. In one hand, proof that I was about to be framed for embezzlement and go to federal prison. In the other hand, a lottery ticket that could change everything. But there was a problem. If I cashed the ticket right now, the state would issue the payout in my name. And under Illinois law, Linda was still my wife, which meant she was entitled to half of any assets acquired during the marriage. $71 million would go straight into her account. And the other $71 million? That would get tangled up in the federal investigation into the missing $12 million. The government would freeze my accounts. They would seize my assets. They would take everything while they built their case against me. I would end up in prison. Linda and Derek would end up in Turks and Caicos. And my lottery ticket would pay for their vacation. I looked at my reflection in the rear-view mirror. The same hollow-eyed stranger stared back at me. But something had shifted. I did not look erased anymore. I looked focused. I took the lottery ticket and folded it carefully. I opened the glove compartment and found an old eyeglass case I had not used in years. I put the ticket inside. I closed the case. I put it back in the glove compartment. Then I started the car. I had a play to make. A long play. The kind that requires patience. The kind that requires letting people think they have already won. Derek and Linda had made their move. They thought they were so smart. They thought they had covered every angle. But they had forgotten something. I am an auditor. I see patterns. I see the gaps in the numbers. I see what people think they have hidden. And I had just been handed the ultimate hidden asset. I pulled out of the parking garage. The city lights blurred past my windows. I did not go home. I could not go home. Not yet. Not until I figured out my next move. I drove south on Lakeshore Drive. The water was black and endless on my right. The skyline glittered on my left. Chicago is a beautiful city at night, when you are driving away from the wreckage of your old life and towards something you cannot see yet. I thought about Derek, about Linda, about the $12 million with my name on it, about the $142 million that they did not know about. And I thought about something my father used to say. He was a construction foreman, died of a heart attack when I was 25, but he taught me one thing that stuck. He said, the best lie is the one people want to believe. Derek and Linda wanted to believe I was stupid. They wanted to believe I would never figure it out. They wanted to believe they had beaten me. So I would let them believe it. I would give them exactly what they wanted. I would play the part. I would be the oblivious husband, the clueless partner, the guy who never saw it coming. And when they felt safe enough to make their final move, I would be ready. I looked at my reflection in the rear-view mirror one more time. The stranger was gone. I knew who I was looking at now. I was looking at a man who had just been given a second chance. Not by luck, by numbers, by patterns, by the same boring, methodical attention to detail that had defined my entire career. They thought they had written me off. They were wrong. The best lie is the one people want to hear. And I was about to become the best liar they had ever met. My father died of a heart attack when I was 25, dropped dead on a construction site in Cicero while yelling at a subcontractor who had poured a foundation 3 inches off spec. They said he was gone before he hit the ground. Quick, clean, the kind of death he would have wanted if he had bothered to think about it. He was not a sentimental man. He did not hug. He did not say he loved you. But he taught me things, practical things, how to change a tire, how to read a contract, how to spot a liar. One thing he said stuck with me. We were watching the news. Some politician had just been caught in a scandal. My father looked at the TV and said, "Give a fool enough rope and he will hang himself." I thought about that as I sat in my car outside a 24-hour diner on Route 41 at 2 in the morning, trying to figure out how to survive the next 48 hours without ending up in federal prison or giving away $142 million to the two people who had just destroyed my life. The diner was one of those old-school places with cracked red vinyl booths and a waitress who looked like she had been working there since the Carter administration. I ordered coffee. I did not touch it. I just sat there in a corner booth with my phone face down on the table and my laptop open, staring at the spreadsheets I had copied onto the thumb drive. $12 million. Routed through my authorization codes. Spread across 9 months. If the feds were already investigating, and they probably were, they would come for me first. I was the signatory. My name was on every transaction. Derek had built the perfect frame, and Linda had given him the motive. I could run. People do that. Disappear. Mexico. Costa Rica. Somewhere without an extradition treaty. But running meant giving up. It meant letting them win. It meant spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. I am not a runner. I needed a different play. Something smarter. Something that used their own greed against them. I thought about the lottery ticket, sitting in the eyeglass case in my glove compartment. That ticket was a nuclear bomb. If I cashed it now, Linda would get half. $71 million. And the other half would get frozen by the government the second they started investigating embezzlement. But if I was not married when I cashed it, the money was mine. All of it. The problem was time. Divorce takes months. Sometimes years. I did not have that kind of time. The feds could knock on my door tomorrow. Next week. Any moment. Unless... I closed my laptop. I paid for the coffee I had not drunk. I drove home as the sun started coming up over Lake Michigan. The sky was that weird gray-pink color that makes everything look washed out and tired. I felt washed out and tired. Our house was in Lincoln Park, a 3-story brownstone that we had bought 5 years ago when the firm started making real money. Linda had picked it out. She had decorated it. She had made it into one of those places that looked like it belonged in a magazine. All white furniture and abstract art, and throw pillows that cost more than my first car. I hated it, but I had never said that out loud. I parked in the driveway. I sat there for a minute. I had not slept in 36 hours. My eyes felt like sandpaper. My hands were shaking from too much coffee and not enough food. I looked like a man whose life was falling apart. I did not have to act. I walked into the front door. Linda was in the kitchen. She was wearing yoga pants and a Northwestern sweatshirt. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She looked perfect. She always looked perfect. She turned when she heard me. Her face did that thing where she tried to look concerned but could not quite pull it off, like she was performing concern for an audience that was not there. She asked me where I had been. Her voice was tight, controlled. I told her I had been at the office. I told her we had a problem. A big problem. I sat down at the kitchen table. I put my head in my hands. I let my voice crack just a little when I told her the federals were investigating the firm. I told her Derek had done something bad. I told her my name was on the paperwork. I told her the company was bankrupt. I told her they were going to come after everything we owned. The house, the cars, her accounts. I looked up at her when I said that last part. I watched her face. For just a second, less than a heartbeat, I saw it. Relief, joy, like she had just been handed a gift. Then it was gone, replaced by that manufactured concern again. She sat down across from me. She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Her hand was cold. She asked me what we were going to do. I told her I had an idea, a way to protect her, to protect what we had built. She leaned forward, interested now. I told her we needed to file for divorce. Immediately, emergency filing. We needed to legally separate our assets before the government froze everything. She would take the clean assets, the house, the cars, her personal accounts, everything that was not tied to the business. I would take the toxic assets, the business debts, the legal liability, everything the feds wanted. It was a sacrifice play. I was falling on the sword to save her. That was the story I sold. And she bought it. Her hand stayed on mine for exactly 3 seconds. Then she pulled it back. She asked me if I was sure. She asked me if there was any other way. Her voice said one thing. Her eyes said another. I told her there was no other way. I told her if we did not do this now, we would lose everything. I told her I could not let that happen to her. I played it perfect. The noble husband, the man who would sacrifice himself to save his wife. She stood up. She said she needed to think about it. She said she needed to call her sister. She did not call her sister. I know this because I had installed tracking software on her phone 6 months ago. Not because I suspected anything. Just because I am careful. Because I am an auditor. Because I check the numbers. She went upstairs. I watched the location on my phone. She stayed in the bedroom. Then I saw the other location marker move. Derek. He was at his condo in the loop. Their markers merged on the screen. They were texting. Or calling. Probably both. I gave them 20 minutes. Then I went upstairs. She was sitting on the bed. She looked like she had been crying. She had not been crying. Her makeup was still perfect. She told me she thought the divorce was the right thing to do. She told me she did not want to do it, but she understood. She told me she would always love me. I told her I would always love her too. We were both lying. The next morning we went to a lawyer, not our family lawyer, a divorce specialist that Linda had found, which meant Derek had found, which meant Derek was already setting up his endgame. Perfect. The lawyer was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a handshake, like a vice grip. Her office was downtown, 32nd floor, windows overlooking the river, the kind of place that charged $500 an hour just to sit in the waiting room. She walked us through the process. Emergency divorce filing, asset division, debt allocation. It would take about 3 weeks to finalize if we both agreed to everything and did not contest anything. 3 weeks. I could work with 3 weeks. Linda's lawyer drew up the paperwork. It was exactly what I had proposed. Linda would get the house, the 2 cars, her personal bank accounts, about $800,000 in liquid assets. I would get the business debts, the legal liability, the federal investigation, and buried in Section 14, subsection B, there was a clause about mutual release of future claims. Both parties hereby waive any and all rights to future financial claims against the other party, including but not limited to assets acquired after the date of separation, inheritance, winnings, or any other form of income or property. The lawyer explained it quickly. Standard language. Protection for both parties. It meant that after the divorce was final, neither of us could come back and ask for more money. Even if one of us won the lottery or inherited a fortune or struck oil in the backyard, Linda barely glanced at it. She was too focused on the $800,000 she was about to pocket. I read every word. Twice. Then I asked the lawyer to add one more line. I said I wanted to make sure the language was ironclad. I said I did not want any loopholes. I suggested we add, including any assets held in trust, deferred compensation, or unrealized gains. The lawyer looked at me. She asked if I was sure. I told her I was sure. I told her I wanted Linda protected. Completely protected. Linda smiled. She thought I was being noble again. The lawyer added the language. Derek had probably told her to get that clause in there. He was thinking about his $12 million in the Caymans. He wanted to make sure that when the dust settled, I could not come after Linda for half of the money she and Derek were planning to spend on their new life together. He thought he was protecting his stolen fortune from me. He was actually protecting my lottery ticket from them. We signed the papers on a Thursday afternoon. The lawyer filed them with the court that same day. Emergency petition. Irreconcilable differences. Mutual agreement. No contest. The judge would review it. We would get a court date. 3 weeks. Maybe less. Linda drove us home. She had insisted on driving. She was in control now. She had the house. She had the money. She had Derek waiting for her. She asked me where I was going to stay. Her voice was light, casual, like she was asking what I wanted for dinner. I told her I would stay with a friend. I told her I would come by over the weekend to pack my things. She said that would be fine. She said to take my time. We both knew I would not be taking my time. The court date came back faster than expected. 15 days. The system moves quickly when both parties agree, and there are no kids, and no one is fighting over anything. We showed up at the courthouse on a Tuesday morning. It was raining. One of those cold October rains that cuts right through your jacket and makes you remember that winter is coming. Linda wore a black dress. Tasteful, elegant, like she was in a gallery opening. I wore the same suit I had worn to my father's funeral. The hearing took 11 minutes. The judge was a tired-looking woman in her 60s who had probably seen 1,000 divorces just like ours. She asked if we had both read the agreement. We said yes. She asked if we both agreed to the terms. We said yes. She asked if there was any possibility of reconciliation. We said no. She signed the decree. She stamped it with a heavy metal stamp that made a sound like a gunshot in the quiet courtroom. She told us we were divorced. She told us to have a nice day. Just like that. 15 years of marriage. Over. We walked out of the courthouse together, not holding hands, not touching, just two people who used to know each other walking in the same direction because the exit was that way. In the parking lot, Linda's Mercedes was gleaming despite the rain. She had detailed it yesterday, getting ready for her new life. She opened the driver's side door. She paused. She looked back at me standing there in the rain, with a single suitcase that held everything I had taken from the house. For a second I thought she might say something. Apologize. Explain. Anything. She did not. She got in the car. She started the engine. She drove away. I watched the taillights disappear into the rain. And then I smiled. For the first time in a month, I smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from somewhere deep in your chest where you keep the things that matter. I reached into my coat pocket. I pulled out a burner phone. One of those prepaid flip phones you can buy at any gas station for $30. I had bought it 2 weeks ago. Paid cash. No name. No records. I flipped it open. I had one call to make. One very important call. The rain kept falling. Traffic moved past me. Nobody paid attention to a man standing alone in a courthouse parking lot, holding a cheap phone, about to change everything. I dialed a number. It rang. Someone answered. 60 days is not a long time. Unless you are waiting for something, then it feels like forever. I spent those 60 days living in a studio apartment in Wicker Park that smelled like the previous tenant's cat and had a radiator that clanged like a prison door every time the heat kicked on. I worked temp jobs, data entry, bookkeeping for small businesses. Nothing that required a background check or raised questions. I was a ghost. Every morning I woke up and checked the calendar. Counting down. The appeal period for the divorce was 60 days. After that, the decree was final. Permanent. Irrevocable. After that, Linda could not touch me, and I could not touch her. After that, I could cash the ticket. The call I made in the courthouse parking lot had been to Jim Kowalski. We played golf together, maybe 5 times over the years. Company outings, charity tournaments, that sort of thing. Nice guy, told terrible jokes, had a handicap of about 18. He also happened to work for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I did not tell him about the lottery ticket. I told him about the $12 million. I told him about Derek. I told him about the shell companies and the Cayman accounts and my stolen digital signature. I told him I had proof. 400 pages of proof. He asked me why I was coming to him instead of the FBI. I told him the truth. Because financial crimes are your specialty. Because I want to make sure these people never see daylight again. Because I need this done right. He told me to come in. Officially, whistleblower protection. Full immunity in exchange for cooperation. I asked him how long it would take. He said 60 days. Maybe 90. These things move slow until they move fast. I told him I had time. That was 8 weeks ago. Since then, nothing. Radio silence. I had no idea if Jim was even working the case or my evidence was sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere gathering dust while Derek and Linda spent my stolen money on champagne and first-class tickets to the Caribbean. But I trusted the system. I trusted the numbers. Numbers do not lie. People do. On day 59, I got a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. Tomorrow night. Showtime. I deleted it immediately. On day 60, I woke up at 5 a.m. I put on my only suit, the funeral suit. I took the eyeglass case out of the glove compartment of my Honda. The lottery ticket was still inside, wrinkled, faded, worth $142 million. I drove downtown to the Illinois Lottery headquarters on West Monroe Street. The building was plain, bureaucratic, the kind of place that processes dreams and turns them into tax revenue. I had called ahead, made an appointment under a trust name. The paperwork was clean, legal, airtight. The woman at the desk was in her 50s. She had reading glasses on a chain around her neck and a smile that suggested she had seen plenty of winners and knew exactly what happened to most of them within 5 years. She asked me if I had the ticket. I handed it to her. She scanned it. The machine beeped. She looked at the screen. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at the screen again. She told me to wait. She disappeared into a back office. 20 minutes later, a man in a cheap suit came out. He introduced himself as the claims director. He asked me to follow him. We went into a conference room with paneling and motivational posters about responsibility and planning for the future. There were 2 lawyers waiting. One represented the lottery commission. One was mine. I had hired him 2 weeks ago, paid him a retainer from the last of my savings. They verified the ticket. They verified my identity. They verified the trust documents. Everything checked out. The claims director asked me if I wanted the lump sum or the annuity. I told him lump sum. He nodded like that was what everyone said. After taxes, it came to $91 million. $91 million that legally belonged to a trust that I controlled. $91 million that Linda had no claim to because of Section 14, subsection B of our divorce decree. $91 million that the federal government could not touch because it was acquired after the investigation started, and I was a protected whistleblower. The claims director told me it would take about 2 hours to process. He suggested I wait in the conference room. There was coffee. It was terrible. By noon, I had the check. $91 million. Wire transfer confirmation on my phone. I walked out of the building into cold November sunlight and checked into the Peninsula Hotel on Michigan Avenue. I took a long shower. Hot enough to hurt. I ordered room service. A steak I barely touched. I sat by the window and watched the city move below me. People rushing, working, living their small lives. I waited. At 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. I did not use Instagram much, but I knew Linda did, and I knew she had thrown a party tonight. I scrolled through my feed. There it was, posted by Amanda Chun. Amanda used to work in accounting at Clearwater. She was still friends with Linda, still went to her parties. The post showed the inside of my old house, the house that was legally Linda's now. There were maybe 40 people, champagne glasses, a catered spread, string lights in the backyard, glowing against the dark November sky. The caption said, "Celebrating New Beginnings." I watched the stories. Linda in a red dress, Derek with his arm around her waist. They were glowing, triumphant. Amanda had gone live. The stream was still active. I unmuted it. I could hear music, laughter, someone giving a toast about fresh starts and following your heart. Then I heard something else. Sirens. The live stream got chaotic. The camera swung around. People were looking toward the front of the house. The music cut out. Someone screamed. The front door burst open. Not knocked. Burst. Like it had been hit with a battering ram. Men in tactical gear poured in. They were wearing windbreakers. Big yellow letters across the back. IRS. FBI. People started running. The camera dropped. All I could see was the floor and people's feet scrambling. Then I heard a voice, loud, authoritative, telling everyone to get on the ground. Hands visible. Do not move. Amanda picked up her phone. The stream was shaky. She was hiding behind a couch. But I could see Linda and Derek. They were in the center of the room, surrounded. An agent was reading them their rights. Another agent was putting handcuffs on Derek. He was not fighting. He looked like he had just been hit by a truck. Linda was screaming. She was demanding to know what was happening. She was saying there had been a mistake. She was saying her husband would explain everything. The agent looked at her. He told her that her ex-husband had already explained everything, in written testimony, 400 pages of it. Linda's face went white. She turned and looked at Derek. He would not meet her eyes. She started crying. Real crying this time. Not the performance she had given me in the kitchen 2 months ago. The live stream cut out. Amanda had probably been told to put her phone away. I sat there in the hotel room, staring at my blank phone screen. The city lights glittered below. Somewhere out there, Linda and Derek were in handcuffs. Somewhere out there, 40 people were being questioned by federal agents. And I was here, safe, rich, free. It took 6 months for the dust to settle. 6 months of indictments, hearings, and asset seizures. The wheels of justice grind slow, but they grind fine. Derek and Linda were both denied bail. Flight risk. The money in the Caymans made that an easy call for the judge. They sat in Cook County while the prosecutors built their case brick by brick. I did not watch the news coverage. I did not need to. I knew what was happening. The same thing that always happens when the federal government decides you are guilty. They take everything. Your freedom, your assets, your dignity. They freeze your accounts. They seize your property. They auction it off to pay restitution and penalties. One morning in May, my lawyer called. The funds had cleared long ago. I had been living quietly in a rental in Evanston, watching, waiting. He asked me if I had seen the listing. I told him I had. Cook County Federal Forfeiture Auction, lot number 42. A 3-story brownstone in Lincoln Park. Seized assets. Final sale. He asked me why I wanted to do this. I told him I was thinking about buying a house. The auction was sparsely attended, maybe 15 people. Most of them were investors, flippers looking for bargains, people who saw misery and saw profit. The auctioneer was a bored woman in a pantsuit who read addresses and starting bids in a monotone that suggested she had done this 1,000 times. The house in Lincoln Park came up third. Starting bid was $400,000, about half what Linda and I had paid for it 5 years ago. The market had softened. Plus, there was a stigma. Everyone knew what had happened there. The raid, the arrests. It had been on every news channel for weeks. Federal embezzlement case. Millions stolen. Picture-perfect couple turned out to be criminals. The story had everything. Sex, money, betrayal. The kind of thing that sells newspapers and tanks property values. Nobody bid. The auctioneer dropped the price. $300,000. I raised my paddle. Someone else bid $325. I went to $350. They dropped out. Sold. $350,000 for a 3-story brownstone in Lincoln Park. I paid in cash. Well, cashier's check. Same thing. The closing took 3 days. Paperwork. Inspections that did not matter because I was not planning to keep it. Title transfer. On the 4th day, I got the keys. I drove over on a warm May afternoon. The trees were green. The sky was that bright blue that Chicago gets in late spring when winter is finally gone and summer has not quite arrived yet. I parked across the street. I sat in my car for a minute, looking at the house. The lawn was overgrown. The paint was starting to peel. 6 months of neglect showed. Nobody had lived here since the night of the raid. Maybe it had been, for a while. I got out of the car. I walked up to the front gate. That was when I saw her. Linda. She was standing on the sidewalk about 20 feet away. She looked different. Older. Much older. 6 months in the system does that to people. She was not wearing makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had on jeans and a North Face jacket that I recognized because I had bought it for her 3 Christmases ago. It looked too big on her now. She had lost weight. She saw me. Her eyes went wide. She started walking toward me. Fast. Almost running. She had been released 2 weeks ago. Bail finally granted after her lawyer argued she was not a flight risk anymore. All the money was gone, frozen, seized. She had nowhere to run. Derek was still inside. His bail had been denied. Again, she was saying my name, Michael, Mike, over and over. She was saying they had taken everything. She was saying it was all a mistake. She was saying I had to help her. I had to tell them it was not her fault. I had to explain that she did not know what Derek was doing. She was saying we were family. She was saying she had done it for us. I did not say anything. I just stood there with my hands in my pockets, watching her fall apart on the sidewalk in front of a house that used to be ours. Then she stopped. She looked past me. She looked at the driveway. There was a car parked there. A new Tesla Model S, midnight blue, still had the temporary plates. She looked at the car. She looked at me. She looked at my coat. It was new, wool, expensive. The kind of coat I never would have bought when we were married because Linda always said we needed to save money. Her expression changed. Confusion turned to realization. Realization turned to rage. She asked me if I knew. She asked me if I had known the whole time. She asked me if I had set this up. I did not answer. She started talking faster. She said she had figured it out. She said I must have won the lottery. She said I owed her half. She said we had been married when I bought the ticket. She said her lawyer told her she had rights. I reached into my coat pocket. I pulled out a piece of paper. It was folded in half. I unfolded it. It was a copy of our divorce decree. Section 14, subsection B. I had highlighted it in yellow. I handed it to her. She read it. I watched her eyes move across the words. Watched her lips move silently as she tried to understand. Both parties hereby waive any and all rights to future financial claims against the other party, including but not limited to assets acquired after the date of separation, inheritance, winnings, or any other form of income or property. She looked up at me. She asked when I had cashed the ticket. I told her the truth. Months ago, the day after the divorce was final, one day after the appeal period ended. She started crying again. She said it was not fair. She said I had tricked her. She said I had always been boring. I had always lived by the rules. I had always been so predictable. I told her she was right. I was boring. I did live by the rules. And rule number 1 in finance is read the fine print. She crumpled the paper in her fist. She threw it at me. It bounced off my chest and landed on the ground. She said she would sue. She said she would fight this. She said she would take everything. I told her she could try. I told her she would lose. I told her she had signed away her rights. She had done it eagerly, happily, because she thought she was stealing from me. She asked what I was doing here. She asked why I was at the house. I told her I had bought it. This morning, at auction, federal seizure sale. Her face went pale. She asked me why. She asked if I was going to live here, if I was going to rub her face in it forever. I shook my head. I turned and nodded toward the street. A construction crew was pulling up. 2 trucks, a small excavator on a flatbed trailer. The foreman got out. He walked over. He asked me if I was Michael. I told him I was. He asked me if I was ready. I told him I was ready. Linda was staring at the excavator. She asked me what I was doing. I looked at her. For the first time since she had started talking, I really looked at her. I saw the lines around her eyes, the gray in her hair she had not bothered to cover, the exhaustion that comes from realizing you bet everything on the wrong hand. I told her there was rot in the foundation, too much to fix, so I was tearing it down. She did not say anything. She just stood there on the sidewalk while the excavator rumbled to life behind me. I walked past her. I got in my Tesla. I drove away. In the rear-view mirror, I watched her standing there, alone, watching the machine eat the house brick by brick. That was a year ago. Derek got 11 years in federal prison. Linda got 8. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. The federal system does not mess around. I did not go to the sentencing. I did not need to see it. I had already seen everything I needed to see. The lot where the house used to be is empty now. Just grass. I sold it 6 months ago to a developer. made a small profit, donated it to charity. I did not buy a yacht. I did not buy a mansion. I did not move to Monaco. I bought a small house on a lake in Wisconsin, 2 bedrooms, a dock, a boat that is old enough to vote. I started a foundation, the Kowalski Fund, named after Jim. He retired last year. We still play golf sometimes. He still tells terrible jokes. The foundation helps people who have been victims of corporate fraud, legal fees, expert witnesses, the kind of support I wish I had needed but did not. I am sitting on my dock right now. It is early morning. The lake is still. The sun is just coming up over the trees on the far shore. There's a heron fishing about 50 yards out, patient, methodical, waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. I have a fishing rod in my hand. I have not caught anything yet today. I probably will not. That is not really the point. People say revenge is poison. They say it eats you up from the inside. They say the best revenge is living well. I do not know if that is true. What I do know is this. Revenge is not poison. Revenge is a mirror. I did not destroy Derek and Linda. I just held up a mirror and let them see who they really were. Let them see what they had done. Let them see the consequences of their own choices. All I did was keep the mirror steady. My phone buzzes. It is a notification from the foundation. We just funded our 100th case. A woman in Ohio whose business partner embezzled her life savings. We are paying for her forensic accountant. I smile. I put the phone away. The heron strikes. Quick. Precise. It comes up with a fish. I watch it fly away. The sun climbs higher. The lake starts to wake up. Boats in the distance. The sound of a screen door slamming at the neighbor's cabin. I cast my line. The lure hits the water with a soft plop. Ripples spread out in perfect circles. If you are listening to this, here is what I want you to remember. Pay attention to the details. Read the fine print. Watch the numbers. They will tell you everything you need to know. And maybe most important, value the quiet. The quiet is where you hear the truth. The quiet is where you see clearly. The quiet is where you figure out who you really are when nobody is watching and nothing is at stake except your own soul. I lost a marriage. I lost a business. I lost 15 years of my life to people who saw me as nothing more than a number in their ledger. But I found something better. I found out what I am made of. I found out that I can be patient. I can be smart. I can be ruthless when I need to be. And I found out that the best revenge is not living well. The best revenge is living true. The heron is gone now. The lake is smooth again, like nothing ever happened. But something did happen, and I was there, and I remember. That is enough.